What's up everybody, I'm the Canadian lad, and today's video is a tribute to Tony Stark for making the ultimate sacrifice at the end of Avengers Endgame. At this point, we all know that he sacrificed himself not only to save his friends, but the entire universe itself. And I don't know how can someone call this act selfish because it wasn't. So how can Tony Stark not be worthy when he ended his life in the most selfless way possible? And that's the question I'm gonna answer today. So without any further ado, let's begin. A lot of people still believe that Tony Stark wasn't worthy even after the events of Endgame, and I totally respect that opinion, but I have my own theory on this, and I believe Tony Stark definitely would have been worthy had he survived his snap, and I'm gonna back this up with 4 reasons, so stick around with me. Number 1. In the origin story of Thor, we have seen how he regained his worthiness by sacrificing his life for Jane Foster, and how many times have we seen Tony Stark laying his life on the line to save the people on Earth? We've seen it in all 4 Avengers movies where Tony was always ready to sacrifice himself, but it's in Endgame that truly cost him his life. But that doesn't take away anything from the fact that he was ready to die even in Avengers 1. So if making sacrifices is one big requirement to be worthy, then Tony Stark should be on that list as well. Number 2. No one is perfect, not Steve Rogers and not even Thor, so it doesn't make sense that Tony wouldn't be worthy simply for being a human, and more so for having flaws that the people who have seen wield the hammer have themselves. Steve Rogers kept a big secret from Tony, and Thor isn't entirely selfless as well. Thanos won literally because of him. If Thor wasn't this much arrogant and selfish in his vengeance, he could have killed Thanos way earlier, and perhaps he would have even go for the head if he didn't want to confront Thanos. But because he wanted to have a one-on-one conversation, that's how Thanos got more time and eventually could snap his fingers. But this failure didn't make Thor unworthy. Even Fat Thor, who does nothing but sits on his ass all day long, is worthy enough to lift Mjolnir. Then why will the same rules affect Tony differently? Number 3. Tony Stark was able to let go of his ego for one final time in his life, and in those dying moments he didn't even try to say something to Pepper like "I love you Pap" or "forgive me for doing this." Literally nothing. He kept quiet and let others go through their emotions. That's the sign of someone who has let go of their ego. At that point he believed he had nothing more to prove. No more witty jokes or calling names. He accepted his death knowing the world's gonna be a bit safe now. Number 4. So does it mean Tony was always worthy considering the fact that he also tried to sacrifice his life back in Avengers 1? And the answer is no. Tony wasn't even worthy for the most part of Endgame. It's at the end of Endgame where he finally becomes worthy, and the reason I say that is because we saw how Tony reacted upon being asked if he knew where Thanos went.
Did he give you any clues? Any coordinates? Anything?
That what we needed was a pseudo armor around the world. Remember that?
Well, that didn't work out, did it?
I said we'd lose. You said, we'll do that together too. And guess what, Cap? We lost. And you weren't there. I got nothing for you, Cap. I got no coordinates, no clues, no strategies, no options, zero, zip, nada. No trust.
He still had some grudge against Steve, and in the final battle he kept on asking Doctor Strange if that was the one reality where they win. These are evidence of his impatient and untrusting personality, and these were keeping him from becoming worthy. He wanted to make sure this was in fact the one reality where they win, whereas Steve Rogers didn't care about those possibilities. All Steve wanted to do was fight and stand up for the right things no matter how tough the situation gets, and that's why Steve Rogers was worthy even before Tony Stark, because Tony needed more time to become selfless, whereas Steve has always been selfless no matter what situation he's in. Worthiness has always been an arbitrary thing that varied drastically from writer to writer. The core problem with the very idea of worthiness is that Thor has never been written as some kind of paragon of virtue, not by any superhero standards. He has always been a fairly standard Marvel hero, which essentially means brave and well-intentioned, but with several character flaws. So the idea of who can match Thor in terms of worthiness has always been very vague, and basically whoever the plot required. Thor in this very movie is a drunk hiding from his failures, and yet he is still worthy. So at the end of the day, it depends on who the plot requires to be worthy. But despite all of that, I still believe had Tony survived his own snap, he would have definitely been worthy by now. So in conclusion, yes, Tony would be worthy. And I'm not saying he was always worthy, because we've seen that the hammer itself takes into account who the person is now as opposed to who they used to be. So I leave you today with one simple question. Do you think Tony Stark was was worthy at the end of Endgame moments before he died? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, then please give me a thumbs up and grab the subscribe button if you haven't already, and follow me on Instagram where I post updates about my videos. I'm Kevin Hart, and I will see you lads in the next one.